Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I've got a great stream with a great guest that I think you're really going to enjoy. Believe it or not, doesn't feel like it was that long ago where my guest today, Seamus Coughlin of FreedomTunes, was on, and we were going to discuss something else, but we had the breaking news that Charlie Kirk had been shot. At that time, we didn't know if he was going to die. We were kind of just going as the news was coming out. However, ultimately, of course, we know Charlie was killed. And in the wake of that, it seemed like for a moment the right was going to come together. We were going to see all of these different factions recognize that, what time it truly is and how dire the situation really is, and put aside our differences and focus on defeating the left once and for all, because we're literally in an existential crisis with people who want to kill us. But only a few weeks later, we immediately saw a number of established conservative figures decide that actually what was really important was to hunt down everybody who had ever made a Hitler joke in private one time. And we should stop everything we're doing in order to weed out every one of those people instead of, actually defeating the left. I think this has been a disaster. And so I wanted to discuss this phenomenon and how it's basically turned into a conservative civil war at this point. Seamus, thank you so much for coming back, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we're going to get to have a chance to talk about some of this stuff. It was obviously devastating. Last conversation we wanted to have, Charlie Kirk was murdered. It was a horrible day for Americans everywhere. It was a horrible day, obviously, first and foremost for him and his family, but also for our freedoms. The idea, I think it was Mike Rowe who said this. It felt like the First Amendment had been shot. This was a moderate conservative who was expressing his values on a college campus, and he was literally murdered. And there's a lot to say about it, but obviously today's topic is the fact that the unity that we had for a very short period of time on the right seems to have been squandered. And I believe the left basically found a way to pry us apart. They're smart strategists. They know where the weaknesses are. They know what they're going to be able to get people to fight over. And they were able to get that done, unfortunately. And listen, hopefully, by the way, this is a productive enough conversation that we're able to convince some people who might be on the other side of this issue, who might be conservatives, who don't agree with your approach or my approach, to go, you know what, actually, we should just put our differences aside right now and go after the left.
Yes. Yeah. Ultimately, this is a plea to get everyone back on track, not to settle the hash between whatever side. We're not looking to say, no, we have to stop and do everything my way. Just saying, no, we actually just need to stop this and defeat the left. And we're going to dive into all the different aspects of that. But before we do, guys, let's hear from today's sponsor. Everyone knows that college is a major investment, so it's really important to do your research. You want to find a school that shares your values, but who has the time to dig through all those college websites? Well, today I've got great news for you. There's a free, easy-to-use resource that does the work for you. It's called ChristianCollegeGuide.com. This online directory of over 250 Christian colleges and universities is a one-stop shop. ChristianCollegeGuide.com lists all the basics such as acceptance rates, tuition costs, and academic majors. But here's what makes this resource truly special. ChristianCollegeGuide.com will show you the school's faith commitments, its campus policies, and its spiritual life. All the info that you will need to find the college you can trust. This is the definitive college guide for Christian higher education, and it's completely free. So if you or someone you know is considering college, go to ChristianCollegeGuide.com to create a free user profile and start today. It's ChristianCollegeGuide.com. All right. So, Seamus, I have this incredible difficulty because I do not want, as I said, I really was hoping that post the Charlie Kirk assassination, we would just be able to come together and recognize that no matter what is happening, no matter what's going on, no matter what internecine disagreements we might have on the right, the left is completely in the realm of political violence, wanting to kill you and your children, making that as explicit as possible. And I feel like that should be something that allows us to say, you know what, however you feel about the propositional nation or debates on whether or not we should impose Christian values or any of these things, ultimately not getting killed is a pretty good, just basic unifying thing, right? Like, we don't have to agree with everybody who's helping us to not be killed. Just not being killed is a good way to bring these factions together. And you just pointed out something that I think is critically important in this story, which is that obviously the left did this with an eye to break up the right's momentum. They know that after the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the leaking of the text message from Jay Jones in Virginia, that they looked really bad, that there was a lot of ugly mud on their face from this. They looked like they really were embracing political violence and were celebrating it. And so they needed something to break up that narrative, right? They needed something that could get conservatives to fight each other, to break away from the focus on what they were doing and the violence that the left is pushing. And so they dropped this group chat story. Now, none of these people are elected officials. None of them hold any power. There is no, this is someone who's, and the stuff people are objecting to were all jokes. Like, Jay Jones literally called the person he was talking about, when he was talking about murdering conservatives and Republicans, he called the Republican he was texting and assured her, no, he really meant it. Like, these were not jokes. Yeah, he's not walking this back. These were clearly private jokes, and none of this needed to be an issue. But the left specifically framed it this way, and now the right has fallen directly into the classic trap where they would rather chase the story that has been waved in front of them by the liberal media because it's so important for them to prove their moral superiority to, I don't know, Nick Fuentes or somebody. And ultimately, they end up destroying everything that the right was doing because it was so important for them to stop and just, flex their moral superiority.
Well, and it surrenders frame. And by the way, I totally understand, and I can almost sympathize with the drive to say those jokes were bad. I do want to say something about this. I don't want to be as bad as the left. I think there are well-meaning people who have fallen into this trap, which is why I would argue it was very cleverly set. But at the end of the day, part of living in truth is recognizing the full context of any news story that's put in front of you. And the reason that the media published this, the reason they pushed this as hard as they did, is because they want you to forget about Jay Jones, or they want you to think that there's an equivalence between these things. They also want you to think there's an equivalence between right-wing rhetoric as it currently stands and where the Overton window is with respect to either political faction calling for actual violence as opposed to making bad jokes or offensive statements. And the reality is the left has openly celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination. They continue to do so. There's a photo that's going viral from the No Kings March of a group of communists with a tent set up where they have flyers saying Charlie Kirk had it coming. I mean, the media doesn't spend a single moment condemning any of this, and then they turn around and say, you need to condemn private jokes made in a private group chat. Now, to be clear, if you had a Republican official running for office who was saying those things unironically, yes, it would be worthy of condemnation. That is not what's happening. They want you to behave as if that is what is happening. We have to live in truth. We have to recognize reality for what it is.
And there's a very simple move here, right? Like, there's the easiest move in the world, which is you say, yeah, group chats weren't great, shouldn't talk like that, and then you just move on, right?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
It's a 4-second discussion. You're not approving the behavior, you're not encouraging behavior, you're not siding with the behavior, but you're not spending news cycles on it. You're not calling to condemn, to denounce, to cancel. You're not looking to bring. Remember 10 seconds ago when all these very, very principled conservatives were saying, but we're against cancel culture. We have to stop cancel culture. That's why we can't put any pressure on Jimmy Kimmel. And those exact same people are turning around and trying to cancel conservatives for using the wrong jokes in private. Again, you don't have to agree with the behavior, but as you point out, the No Kings protests just show us that the left has not stepped away from this at all. In addition to that picture you were talking about, there's also a Hispanic woman with a Mexican flag who is mocking Charlie Kirk's murder. She's pointing at her throat and shooting, right? Like trying to say, we're going to shoot you in the throat. We're going to shoot more of you in the throat. She's a school teacher, right? Like this is not a situation that is analogous. Okay, the left is celebrating murder. They are pushing for murder, and these are the people who are teaching your children, who are caring for people in hospitals. Like these are very, very dangerous people to have wishing death upon you because they have care of your health, your well-being, your children. This is just nothing like the Young Republican thing. And so the fact that they were not able to simply stay on focus and say, okay, yep, not the way we behave. Don't do that again. Now, how about you guys murdering Charlie Kirk? Let's talk about that some more. And somehow they completely lost the ball. Again, it's almost like they're paid to do that. It's almost like it's almost like if I didn't think these people actually did believe in their own moral superiority, I would swear they're being paid by the opposition to control the conservative movement.
Well, I'll add this too. If I want to try to maybe steelman my opponent's argument here, I could say there might be conservatives who are concerned about the direction the right is going in, and they're thinking, well, these things start as jokes and then eventually it becomes serious, and they want to do that. And that's what happened on the left. But it really isn't what happened on the left, actually. The left started by saying, we need to punch Nazis. They were speaking very earnestly, and then they just expanded the definition of what a Nazi was. So the left at no point in time ever joked about any of this. They've always been very serious about political violence, and they've always said so openly. And surprise, surprise, the end result has been that there's more political violence, and that by and large, even the moderates on the left are willing to accept it. So I think, again, we just need to be sober about what's happening. Like you said, we can and should say, okay, yeah, you shouldn't say those things. You shouldn't joke like that. But a bunch of people in a private group chat don't actually affect my life to the same degree that elected leaders do. And these elected leaders aren't just joking. They are literally explicitly calling for violence. That's a much more serious problem. And we should probably stay laser focused on that, especially when the response from civil authorities has not been what it's needed to be in order to curtail this behavior. All right, we have not seen the kinds of arrests that we would need to see in order to prevent something like this from happening again in the future. And until those arrests are made, until Antifa isn't just declared a terror group, but is really and truly treated like a terrorist organization, the way a government that's trying to defend its people from violent lunatics would treat a terrorist organization, we need to be very loud and very clear about the fact that our lives are in danger and we are being failed by the people we elected in order to protect us.
Yeah, that seems huge, right? Like this is not somebody got fired from their job. They couldn't speak on a university because he got booed too much. Like this is the end of free speech. Yeah. Like you can't have a country in free speech where the speaker gets shot in the throat, right? Like it's just not an option. So when we say this is existential, like we really mean it. That's not hyperbole. The country cannot continue as intended in this manner. Something drastic has to change. And yet it feels like we're still having debates like we're back in the 1990s, right? Like we're just trying to tell Bill Clinton to reduce the marginal tax rate, as opposed to like, no, there's like a shooting war that could break out if you don't actually fix this problem. And it's interesting because this has divided even between, different voices in, kind of the same sphere. You got guys like Matt Walsh, completely disagreeing with Ben Shapiro on this. And it's such a strange frame because I've seen, for instance, Shapiro saying, well, really what it is that the left has let their radicals go too far and we didn't. That's why we're winning. First, if you think like conservatives have just won in perpetuity at this point, you've lost your mind, right? Like that's not even close to the case. But also you should remember, like actually Donald Trump was considered a radical. His followers were considered radical by Ben Shapiro, among other people, right? Like that's where the whole Never Trump movement came from. A lot of those guys are still now kind of Trump, right? Like, but they're trying to pretend like they're the ones who get to decide and define what the Trump legacy is. But of course, all the things that Trump is doing now, from deploying the National Guard to keep the peace in different American cities, talking about mass deportations, trying to end foreign wars. These were not things that were part of the Republican platform 10 years ago. Donald Trump made them part of the platform. Tariffs, reshoring business. These are all things that the establishment conservative kind of complex was pushing back against. They hated him for this. This is why they tried to drive him out. And this is also why they tried to replace him with Ron DeSantis once they thought they could. These people are not pro-Trump. They were never pro-Trump. They always hated Trump. They always hated Trump's followers. They always thought all parts of this were too radical. And now they're like, well, no, I get to define what is over the line in the new Trump administration. And it's like, no, guys, actually, you don't. And the idea that, well, if we just dial it back and we be moderate while the left embraces its radicals, well, that's not what got Donald Trump elected twice. So
Well,
actually that narrative is just entirely false.
when you have to remember the things that the establishment pushed back against Trump on were all of the positions that he was more right wing on. Trump has plenty of positions that are actually pretty left wing that the Republican establishment did not do much to push back against. And I consider that to be unfortunate, actually. I think Trump needs to be better on a number of issues. He needs to be better on the life issue. He needs to be better on gay marriage. He needs to be better to some extent, even on transgenderism, even though he's done some good things there and pushing back against it. But of course, the establishment Republicans didn't really care about any of that. Their concern was that he wanted to close the border, that he wanted mass deportations, that he wanted to do the things that you should actually expect a conservative or right-wing leader to do in your country if they get elected, especially after the border's been left wide open for 4 straight years. So I agree with you. It's really difficult to take the establishment seriously when they say these things. And Trump has shaped the Republican Party for better or for worse. He's done some great things to the party. I think he's done some awful things to the party. The establishment has pretty much only been upset about the good things he's done in typical fashion. Now, what I'm really worried about here, and this is what we talked about last time, is whether he's going to go the distance in actually prosecuting our enemies and in actually protecting us from the radicals who have spoken very clearly about the fact that they do want to kill us. I mean, if he only goes halfway with this and then we lose the next election, I don't think people realize how bad the retaliation from the left is going to be. I mean, they murdered Charlie Kirk while Trump was in office under Republican leadership. And not only that, because maybe if you want, I think it's dishonest, but if you want, you can write this off as one crazy radical who went and did this. But the entirety of the left is either openly celebrating it or they're doing this bitchy, passive-aggressive, mealy-mouthed non-condemnation where they go, well, they shouldn't have done it, but he was a radical who said horrible things, and we shouldn't be surprised. This is what they're doing when a Republican is in office. And not just that. This is what they're doing when, like, the Republican who they're constantly telling us is a big, scary fascist is in office. So what do you think they're going to do if they win the next election? What do you think they're going to do if their radicals who have promised to do us significant bodily harm aren't put in prison? What are they going to do if the networks for funding these radicals are not sufficiently investigated? And people will say things like, oh my gosh, have Republicans and conservatives abandoned their principles? They're talking about acting outside of the law. No, actually, if we just thoroughly enforced the law as it currently stands, none of this would be happening. It's not legal to openly call for violence. It's not legal to fund terrorist organizations. But we don't do anything about it. Like the right isn't doing anything about it. And instead of putting immense pressure, I mean, this is an unprecedented situation, isn't it? We have an assassination that took place in broad daylight. Many on the left are celebrating it. The dominant media culture seems to have made it perfectly clear that not only will they not outright condemn it, but they'll sort of dog whistle that they think it was okay. And we have a Republican administration in place that said it was going to do something and really is not doing as much as it needs to. And instead of staying laser focused about that, Republicans are allowing themselves and conservatives are allowing themselves to be distracted. We got to stop.
I agree 100%. You make an excellent point that, he who runs half a revolution, digs his own grave, right? You have to recognize that even if all we're doing is restoring America back to constitutional governance, right? Like just that, like not violating the Constitution, not violating the law, just restoring us back to constitutional governance. We are so far from constitutional governance that just returning to it is itself a revolution. So understand, like, you are essentially in a revolutionary setting one way or another, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to call it the counter revolution, but that's what's happening here. And as you point out, if they thought that they were like crazy, battling against fascists, authoritarians, or whatever before this administration, they will most certainly turn that up to 11 afterwards, right? Like, as crazy as you might think it is, it's only going to get more crazy. And if you do not recognize that, if you do not realize this, then you are a fool. Like, if you are sitting there saying, well, no, we won the election and so Trump is in power and so things are back to normal and everything's fine. This is what conservatives always do.
Sydney
They always
Sweeney was
win
in
an
a Gene
election.
advertisement.
Right.
America's back.
And the woke is
We're
done. Right.
fine. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. This is always conservatives do. They win one election and then they're like, oh, guess it's done. We fixed the problem. No, this is why the left wins. Because when they win the election, they know that is one step in 1,000.
That's the beginning. That's
the
beginning.
Right.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. I mean, completely agreed. I don't know what people think is going to happen. Like, listen, dude, I don't know about you. I don't plan on changing my views anytime soon, right? I'm still going to be here in 2028. The radicals on the left who want to kill guys like you and me, which is just honestly to say normal people, because it's not even just fellas like us, not to call you and I normal, right? I don't want to engage in false advertisement here. But these leftist radicals, like, they don't just want to do us harm. Any normal person is a Nazi to them. Anyone who believes in like the nuclear family, even anyone who's just white, right? Because whiteness is an ideology that promotes systems that disenfranchise people of color, et cetera, et cetera. Like, these people aren't going to go away in 2028 either. We have two factions, like you said. Some of us want to restore like a constitutional Republican style of government. Others want to continue to push in the direction of communism. That's not going to disappear overnight. So what is the Trump administration going to do to protect us again against the people who have explicitly said they want to do us harm? Like, this doesn't go away overnight. This does not go away overnight. And we can't make it. Like, I'm sorry, man. If we could just snap our fingers and have everything go back to normal, maybe that's a conversation we could have. But people say, like, we need to restore normalcy. Well, how do you plan on doing that? If like anything that even comes close to resembling normalcy is basically just you being able to exist in a country which is safe. And at this point, the only way the country is going to be safe is if the terror organizations that have previously been able to run free and do whatever they want are prosecuted and imprisoned and kept off the streets.
You know, I'm going to butcher this Julius Caesar quote, but it's something to the effect of, you know, it's easy to find men to die in one glorious combat. It's impossible to find men who will suffer day in and day out. And it's really so true of the conservatives. You can get a lot of energy going, right? You can say, okay, we got to get this one thing done, but you can't get them to stay on task, right? Like, the minute anything runs in front of them, they immediately just go chasing it. And that's exactly what happened with this story, right? Like, you needed to recognize, and I'm with you. I'm glad to see that the Trump administration is taking some steps, right? They finally started arresting some of the people doing terrorism. They keep promising that they're going after the financial networks and building the cases against the NGOs. I hope that's true. Obviously, I know building a RICO case is going to take time. So it's not something that just happens in a week. But it was very clear for a while that the Trump administration was losing control of the streets, right? And that's where things get very bad. Because if you have people constantly trying to shoot ICE agents, bomb ICE agents, assault ICE agents, you can't just let them go home, right? Like, you can't just arrest them and then slap them on the wrist. You have to hit these people with federal charges, pull them out of the jurisdictions that are protecting them, make sure that they pay serious prices. And we've only seen a little bit of that from the Trump administration so far. And the only reason I think we even saw some of that was ultimately that we were all collectively pushing to see serious action taken. And yet, the minute that a bunch of people, you know, get any kind of story waved in front of their face, oh, look, someone said mean things in a group chat, it's immediately got to devolve into this. And I think it's not, so there's a couple things happening, right? What I think the people who are, you know, this is what I hear most often from these guys is, well, I'm not going to ally with Nazis. I don't care. I'm not going to ally with Nazis. And it doesn't matter how, you know, if we win with Nazis on our side, then it just doesn't work. Well, first, a couple things, right? Like, in World War II, you sided with the communists, right? Like Stalin was evil. He was just as evil, if not more evil than Hitler, but there was no way we were going to be able to fight both of them simultaneously. So we had to make a choice. And so we sided with one of them, right? That doesn't mean we have to like them. Doesn't mean every American GI endorsed communism. It just meant that at the time we had to win. Second, there is no real Nazi threat. Okay,
That's
I'm sorry.
exactly
I know some people are making edgy Hitler jokes. Tell them to stop making edgy Hitler jokes and grow up. Fine, but like, this is not a real thing. Okay, I'm sorry, but the Third Reich is not reconstituting itself. Slavery isn't coming back. And if you believe that stuff, you're just a leftist, because that's what the leftists have been saying the entire time. Secretly, it turns out all of Americans are really just secretly fascist and racist, and that's what the conservative leadership believes. So if they don't spend all of their time crushing every ounce and turn themselves into anti-fascist crusaders, then ultimately, we're gonna lose. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. You can work with people you don't completely agree with, and you can recognize that they are not the same thing as a violent left that is trying to kill you.
Well, exactly. So you're right. When they say, well, I'm not going to make an alliance with Nazis, this is kind of a when did you stop beating your wife style question / statement, where baked into it, there is the assumption that you, my interlocutor, is actually doing something reprehensible. No one's talking about making an alliance with Nazis. We're saying we don't need to discard like human waste any person in our movement who the left accuses of being a Nazi.
Yeah, it seems very obvious, right? Like obviously people are not looking around and being like, oh boy, I'm really excited about that one guy who shared a Hitler meme, and I definitely want him to lead my movement. That's not what's happening. It's just saying, hey, let's not stop literally everything we're doing to try to defeat the left, so we can argue with each other about whether or not like this one Hitler meme is the most dangerous thing to ever exist in the world, right? It's fine. Nobody's a Nazi anymore. Fascism is dead. Move on. Just be an adult and move on, okay? The people you're trying to fight now are literally the communists. Like, as you point out, like literal communists at these protests supporting the idea of communism.
Of murdering Charlie Kirk,
Right.
Well, that's exactly right. Like, someone making an idiotic offensive joke, again, that's an idiotic offensive joke. That is not the same as a public statement that violence against you and your family is good and moral. We can't treat these things like they're on the same level. I know I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but I just really want to stress that these are not the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I get it. Like, there's a lot of people who are very touchy. I'll just say it because it's impossible not to notice that most of the people who are really obsessed about like this group chat and having to stop the entire movement to talk about it, they're all pretty big fans of Israel, right? And so like if there was some joke about Hitler, then like we need to stop and we got to figure this out. It's like, guys, again, I understand you're touchy about it. I get why. Like I don't want to see a lot of people, being like super hateful to Jewish people. I get that. I don't want to see people advocating, violence against Jewish people or anything. No. But that's just not where we are, right? Like, that's just not what's happening right now. And the idea that like you need to immediately like throw the entire conservative movement into turmoil and make it impossible for us to push what needs to be done so that you can like cancel 5 guys somewhere because they triggered like your insecurity on this issue, it's just insane. It has to stop. This has to stop being what dictates our political strategy in the United States. We cannot be obsessed with World War II and the Holocaust forever. It's in the history. It's in the past. Move on. Be an adult.
Well, but again, this is also why I said I completely understand someone going like, yeah, I don't like those jokes. And this is what we were saying earlier. Yeah, those are not good jokes to make. That is offensive humor, etc. We don't like that. It's just a question of whether this is something that rises to the level of what the left is doing, which it just obviously doesn't. I mean, it obviously doesn't. So what we should be doing as a movement right now is staying unified in calling for the people who like literally do want to kill us. Because by the way, regardless of where you stand on any of these issues, regardless of whether you support Israel or not, the person most likely to kill you is probably a radical leftist, right?
That's
like
correct.
No one from this group chat was going to climb on top of a building and shoot at you with a sniper rifle. Okay? That's not within the reasonable realm of expectation. The people who are saying, let's kill the Nazis, the people on the left who are saying, let's kill the Nazis, like, I don't know if you've noticed, but they also consider Jewish people Nazis. They consider people who do support Israel Nazis. So that's your threat. Like, if you're going to be worried about genuine violence from any group of people, probably the ones who are actually doing the violence and calling for more of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And Charlie Kirk, and by the way, like, Charlie Kirk was notorious. He was like famously pro-Israel. So again, if you want to talk about who the actual threat is to you, if that's your number one issue, it's still the radical left.
That's exactly right. Like, who is more dangerous to a Republican Jewish person? Some guy making a Hitler joke, or leftists who will literally shoot at you,
yeah.
or will send agents of the state to arrest you for being a conservative, right? Like,
Mhm.
sorry, but the left is just far more dangerous to you. So even if this is your primary concern, even if that is like what you truly fear, even in that mindset, even with that goal set, like obviously the left and its communist agenda, its violent agenda is far more dangerous to you, even as an Israeli supporter or a
Mhm.
Jewish person in the United States. It's just not even close, and everyone knows that. Everyone
Mhm.
understands that. So again, I just, this is a call, right? This is once again a call to people who are obsessed with this. We have got to move on. Okay, I understand. I disagree with plenty of people on the right, and I will continue to disagree with them. But this is not the time. Like, I'm not spending 1 ounce of energy getting any person I disagree with on the right canceled right now.
Yeah. And by the
That's
way,
just not.
and I'll say this, that also goes for the people who disagree with us on this. Like,
Right.
if you've just been condemning this group chat and you've been outspoken on this, listen, I think you took the bait. I think you focused on the wrong thing. I think you put your energy in the wrong place. I am still very happy to work with you on everything else here. This is too important. Like, we've got to get this done. We've got to set this aside. We've got to move forward. We've got to solve the problems that are actually facing us. Like, we really do need to be concerned about the fact that there are people who want to enact violence against us and that it's so socially acceptable for them to call for it. I mean, I know we talked about this earlier, but the Jay Jones situation is just insane. Like you
Right.
said, he has a phone call with her. You can tell based on the text messages too that this is not the first time that they've talked about this. Like, it
Oh
makes it pretty
no.
clear. I think she says something like, "You were saying this before, or we talked about this last time." I mean, listen, I don't know anyone on the right who, even at their absolute worst, is fantasizing about the children of leftists dying in their arms, right? What right wingers actually spend most of their time doing is advocating for the safety of children who would be harmed by left wingers,
Right.
including left wing parents. Like, no, you shouldn't be able to kill your baby in the womb. No, you should not be able to give your child drugs that are going to result in an irreversible chemical castration. Like, no one on the right is saying, oh yeah, no, abortion is good and, transing kids is good because it's only left-wing people doing it anyway, and I want to see the children of left-wingers get hurt. It is literally the exact opposite. It's, you can't hurt children like that. The reason I oppose your movement is because you want to hurt children, and that makes you my enemy. Now compare that to the left. They use this fake concern for children as a pretext to enact their agenda, but they clearly don't actually care about it because, again, not only do you have an example of a prominent Democrat who isn't even considered a radical leftist, by the way, given his policies. He's a pretty moderate Democrat, comfortable enough to just openly fantasize about Republican children dying multiple times. And you have no one in the Democratic Party, virtually no one, condemning it. It's like this. So that's the difference. Their party doesn't care about children. Their party doesn't care about human life. Surprise, surprise. The people who scream at the top of their lungs if you talk about taking away their, unrestricted privilege to murder as many unborn babies as they want don't actually care about human life. And we're out here trying to say, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on or your children are on, you shouldn't be allowed to hurt them.
It really is true. You're to the point where, again, it is just amazing that he ended up calling her back. Just to be really clear, no, I very much do want to kill Republicans. I'm not joking, and there's a complete moral case for this, and you need to understand it. Like, it's
People
absolutely,
don't move on policy unless they feel pain.
right, right. And so one of the reasons, of course, that they feel this entitled is they control the entire apparatus when it comes to things like entertainment, right? You look at Jimmy Kimmel and what happened with him. He's canceled for 3 days, and you end up getting everyone reversing their decision on this after, by the way, the left commits a bunch of terrorism, including shooting up an ABC station to get him back on the air. But another big part of it is that he had all the Hollywood influence, right? That a bunch of his friends who were critical to the the studio system and everything else, they spoke up and they put the pressure on. And that's what giving control of your culture over to your enemies does, right? And one of the things that you do, obviously, is you are creating culture. We're always talking, why won't the right make art? Why won't the right make comedy? Why won't the right make anything? Well, you are someone who does do that on a regular basis. And I know that you are getting ready to start a new show. You're trying to crowdfund, get ready to do that. So can you talk a little bit about that show and why you think it's important for the right to take charge of the cultural reins just as much as it's important for them to use political power?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I even get into that, I just want to respond to something you said there about Jimmy Kimmel specifically. It's so outrageous and insulting that after Charlie Kirk gets murdered over protected speech, Jimmy Kimmel becomes the free speech martyr.
Right.
It's beyond parody. I mean, like, and I don't use this phrase often. Like, it's actually disgusting. Like, it's genuinely disgusting. And the fact that he and his compatriots on the left have such little shame that they would unironically make him out to be the victim in that scenario is beyond parody, actually. I don't even know if I could make a cartoon about that. It's so ridiculous. But yeah, so for the last 11 years, I've been making animated political satire. Myself and my team have created over 600 videos on the FreedomTunes channel alone. We've also done videos with other organizations. The number of videos we've done is beyond 700 at this point. On the FreedomTunes channel, we've amassed 1 million subscribers. We've got 290 billion views total, and this is with $0 spent on marketing. And the reality is it's because people want this kind of content. For so long, the media has been dominated by the left. It has been dominated by people who hate your values. The closest the right has ever been able to get to any kind of satire in the mainstream from their perspective has been South Park. And obviously, South Park is not right wing. They just happen to go after the left sometimes.
Right.
So I make these cartoons, and my goal as I'm making them is not like, how can we win? How can I go after the left? I'm just interested in politics. So I'm writing about things that matter to me. And because I am right wing, my perspective just organically emerges from the script and makes its way into the cartoon. I don't sit there and say, like, how do I convince people of this? I just go, what happened this week? What's funny about it? And then obviously what ends up being funny about that to me as someone who's on the right is the nonsense you get from the left and sometimes from right-wing people. We do poke fun at the right sometimes too. So I made a decision a little while ago that we needed to move beyond just making these short cartoons on YouTube. I think those are important, and we plan to continue making them. But we need to start competing in the arena of half-hour-long television-length programming. And so after the election, we had a little bit of money saved up just because we got extra traction, as we tend to during election years. And I invested that money back into the company, back into trying to build more culture, putting some projects together behind the scenes. And one of them was this pilot that we made. It's 25 minutes long. What I'm basically saying is we have the first episode of the show totally finished. So we decided we wanted to launch an anthology series. It's called Twisted Plots. And each episode is a completely different story, completely different concept, and expresses some kind of like conservative or Christian or right-wing value, not through the conservative character owning the lib and having his rant on camera, but just organically through the jokes, through the story, because that's how the left has influenced people historically as they have dominated entertainment culture. It's not like they have one character walk up to another character and like own them with facts and logic. That happens sometimes, but sparingly. Usually what happens is like they tell a story and the moral of the story ends up being something like, well, actually, it's okay to get divorced and reinvent yourself. Or, you know what? It's really beautiful and romantic to cheat on your fiance with a homeless guy. That's literally what Titanic's about. It's perfectly good for you to lie in the favor of a left-wing political cause. Again, not rants, not speeches, just stories that are constructed in a specific way. And the reality is, I don't even know how much of it is directly intended. The artists are all leftists or have left-wing perspectives. And so it just organically flows from them as they write these stories. And so what we're doing is we're just trying to tell stories that are really good, that have truth, beauty, and goodness in them, and are interesting and funny. And so right now we have a crowdfunding campaign going to fund the first season of our show. We can't win the culture war if we're not making culture. I've got the track record, I've got the team, I've got the experience. All I need now is the support of the audience. and we've gotten a massive outpouring of audience support. We're about 12 days in, and we're more than 50% funded, which is huge. So if you guys want to get access to the pilot, you want to see what we're doing, go over to twistedplots.com, support us, help us make this show. I think you guys are going to love it. And the hope is, after we produce the first season of this show, we're going to be able to expand out into other things, making other shows, potentially making movies, because the fact of the matter is the right does need to be making entertaining content. A lot of right-wing organizations have attempted this. I think some of them bit off a little more than they could chew because they didn't have experience in entertainment and they tried making too much at once. That's why we're starting in a reasonable, humble way, but in an impactful way. Like, this is going to be a really, really good show.
Yeah, I just encourage people to go and, contribute. A lot of people, of course, will talk endlessly about why we don't have right-wing culture. Why don't we have right-wing culture? Why won't anyone make right-wing culture? But when it comes time to actually fund right-wing culture, all of a sudden no one's around. And we need a culture of patronage, guys. We need a culture of embracing creativity and projects and making sure that people who share our values, as Seamus said, he's not making an after-school special. He's not making, one of these like Christian movies where it's just 95% an altar call. We're talking about building actual shows out that are funny, entertaining, and just happen to organically have a right-wing viewpoint, and therefore are much more successful. So I think people need to put their money where their mouth is and actually support projects like this, because if they don't, then you can't really sit around and tell me, oh, well, why don't I have any right-wing culture? Why is it all left-wing dominated? Well, because the left will pay for movies. They will fund these things, and they won't expect to immediately make money on the return. It's nice if they do, right? But they'll keep putting out left-wing movies, even if they don't turn a profit, just because they think it's so important to have that art there in the world. And if a leftist can be that committed to their beliefs, one would hope that you can be as well.
Well, and this is the thing not a lot of people realize. Part of why we have such little entertainment on the right is because this stuff costs way more money than you would ever imagine. So I try to break this down for people. An episode of The Simpsons, I mean, it costs millions of dollars for one single episode, and it takes about 9 months to make each one. Now, you might say The Simpsons has a lot of big stars on it. They need to pay those voice actors a lot. It's a big hit. Definitely. But you can look at smaller shows with lesser known casts. So initially, when South Park premiered in 1997, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were nobodies at that time, right? It cost $250,000 to make one single episode of that show in season one. And that was in 97. Adjusted for inflation, that's $500,000. So this stuff's expensive, and people go, how? Well, it's because you need a crew of sometimes dozens of people working for months at a time, and it ends up adding up. So we've been able to budget really efficiently here. We're going to be able to make our entire season for the inflation adjusted cost of one episode of season one South Park, and it looks a lot better. If you guys go over to twistedplots.com, you'll be able to see our first episode. We also did a pitch for the crowdfunding video that you'll be able to see at twistedplots.com, where we include little samples of visuals from the show. And we've been able to do some animation tests. We're going to be able to get this to look really, really nice. Like it's at television level quality for sure. With FreedomTunes, part of the charm of it is like, listen, we got to churn each video out in a week. Sometimes we'll make a video in like 2 or 3 days. The animation quality, when you do that, is not always going to be at the level you might want for it to be. With this, we're like, because if they're longer episodes that we're taking more time on, we're really able to put attention to the animation details that we don't always get to put into FreedomTunes. So it looks really nice. And that's another part of the goal. We want to make something that's undeniable. We want to make something that even a left-wing person is going to see and like, yeah, maybe the morals piss them off, but they're not going to be able to say that it isn't good. And like, if they are, they're lying, because it's gonna be good. And we've already gotten a lot of really good feedback on our first episode. We still plan on like doing a little bit of tweaking, messing with the audio and stuff, but you'll be able to get a version of it behind the, twistedplots.com GoFundMe or Give Send Go. And again, it's 25 minutes long. But yeah, part of what I want to express here too is the reason it's been so hard for conservatives to do this kind of thing in the past is because it is so expensive. And part of what's amazing about the present day is we can use platforms like Give, Send, Go to crowdfund these kinds of projects. Because, like, let's face it, if you go to a conservative organization and ask them to fund something like this, it's not even just that they might not be willing to, they probably won't have the money. Like their budgets are kind of tight. If you want really good, sharp looking animation and a good story, and you want the video to come out looking really decent and actually being above the crust of a lot of the stuff you might see on television, if you want it to actually compete, it is going to be expensive. And that's part of why I'm so grateful to the people who have contributed so far, because again, in just 12 days, we're 50% funded, which suggests that this is what people want. It actually sends a message to the establishment. People want grassroots content. People want content that does espouse right-wing values. People want content that's made by people who don't have contempt for them, who don't hate their way of life, who don't hate their family, who aren't trying to slowly chip away at their culture through propaganda. And again, they also want it to be made by people who are outsiders. They want it to be grassroots. They don't necessarily like trust conservative ink to produce this stuff.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we are going to go to the questions of the people here. But obviously, great to have Seamus on, and make sure that if you can, that you go and support his work. You said it was a Give Send Go, right?
Yeah. So if you go to twistedplots.com, it'll take you to our landing page, and then the donation amount you select will go through Give Send Go. It'll take you there automatically. So just twistedplots.com. You'll see everything laid out there. Again, we've got to beat the left. The only way we're going to be able to do that is by making culture. Right now, all of entertainment media is basically dominated by people who hate your values, and they're chipping away at your culture through propaganda. I've got the experience. I've got the team. We know how to do this. We've even got the pilot made. If you guys give us your support, we will be able to make something really special here, and we will really be able to push back.
Excellent. All right, let's go to the questions of the people here. Herb Seasoning says, conservatives always run until they are out of breath to say how bad it would be for fellow Republicans to actually ally with the American right. Yeah, again, this is unfortunately a scenario where there seems to be infinite amount of energy to, reach out to the left, debate the left, have conversations with the left, even though the left is trying to kill you. But no, not so much for the right. The right, they are conservatives are always canceling to their right and reaching out to their left, and that tells you a lot about the American political dynamic.
Yep, no, that's absolutely right. But this kind of goes into what I'm saying, right? Like culture has been dominated by people on the left. It isn't just news media.
Yep.
And who do you repeatedly see portrayed as like the only good conservative in entertainment media? It's always the Republican who condemns the other Republicans.
Right.
There is a great show. So Sorkin is a very funny guy, because if you've ever seen The West Wing or The Newsroom, he does do a lot of this preaching that I think is generally not effective. I actually think his style of writing turns a lot of people off, but he's talented enough that he's able to get away with the preaching because the dialogue's really snappy and the way it's worded is very satisfying to hear, especially if you agree with it. But in his show, The Newsroom, if I'm not mistaken, the protagonist is a Republican.
Yes.
And all he does for the whole series is criticize conservatism and Republicans. And if I'm not mistaken, they even did an episode where the network doesn't want to let him criticize the Tea Party because, as we know, at that time, like the mainstream media was just terrified of criticizing the Tea Party. And the brave Republican with real principles stands up and in front of the public on television, he criticizes the Tea Party. So this is a long-standing trope in media. The principled conservative who wants to lose.
They actually called, if you remember, the Tea Party the American Taliban at the time. And this,
is that where that comes from?
That's where that came from. And this became very popular among the left at the time, right? You had Jon Stewart and all these people repeating it. And they're all repeating this Aaron Sorkin line that's been thrown out by this Republican that he's writing. So, yeah, I mean, this, and talk about, of course, projection. Like today, it is the left that is doing terrorism. But the Tea Party was going to be the American Taliban, and yeah, you're exactly right.
And again, it's like I do have a certain level of respect for his writing ability. I really do, because he is able to make it sound smooth and clever, but it is just preaching at the end of the day. I mean, it's like he's having arguments in his head,
That's
and then
exactly
he's
it.
writing them, and his self-insert is totally owning the cons. It's
Well,
actually really funny.
This has been, Aaron Sorkin's greatest hit, I think, against him most of the time, is that all of his characters sound the same because they're all him.
They're
right?
all
Like
him.
it's all him talking to himself, having discussions with himself, how he thinks he would talk to a Republican that was reasonable, what it would look like if a Republican was reasonable. It's just being Aaron Sorkin. So that's the kind of the entire. Like you said, he's a gifted writer. He does have a great turn for phrase, with dialogue, but ultimately it really always just sounds preachy. It just simply sounds like a more elevated version of the after school special.
Yes.
Where the parents, and the kids like, well, I guess you were right all along, mom and dad. Thanks. We've got Blood-Based here with just a generous donation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. We've got Mimiboo, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that, says, use outrage to advantage. Say, Kirk assassination worse than the war in Gaza, or Kirk's assassination worse than MLK Jr.'s, if they want a red flag to chase. I see what you're saying. Like, so steal back the conversation of momentum by saying something that is going to kind of throw them off their game. I could see that. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work at this point, but I do like the idea of being on the offensive with the frame, figuring out this is what Trump does so well, right? This is why Trump, for whatever his flaws, is so effective, because he will just step in and wreck a news cycle, right? He'll just step in and say, what do you guys want to talk about? Well, I'm talking about something entirely different, and I'm going to say it in such an audacious way that it's the only thing that you can talk about. And now you're just talking about me. And he knows how to drive a news cycle. And it's often by using the kind of tactic you're talking about. Latrina Bidit, IRS enforcer, says, Auron and Carlin Baransko, I'm not sure who that is, sorry, inspired me to start something grassroots, ordered a voter walking map, going door to door at local Republicans are useless. The boats are burned. Nobody is coming to save us. Well, I am very glad that you are getting involved. I'm glad that if can encourage you to get involved in local politics, then that's fantastic. Do remember, though, that while knocking on doors for Republicans is good, you're still getting them to vote for local Republicans, right? And they're probably useless, as you point out. So remember, it's not just about getting the votes, though I'm not decrying what you're doing. It's also about building community, right? We need to cultivate the type of leaders that we want, and the only way we can do that is by having the communities that inculcate the type of virtues that we're looking for. So working with your church, working with local organizations, I'm part of a fraternal organization, the Old Glory Club, that helps do this kind of stuff. If you can get things like that started in your community, that is just as important as going around and like knocking on doors for political candidates. In fact, probably at the end of the day, more important. So I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying also be aware that it's not just about politics. If you get culture, as we were talking about with Seamus and his project, if you control culture, the politics will follow, right? And so that's critical to remember. Herb Seasoning says, with how activated they have become without wide legal crackdown, we're in a position to get hosed in 2028. 2020 summer won't compare. Again, you really should take the left seriously at this point. They are violent, and they are willing to use that and deploy that and cheer that on and champion the people who do violence in their name. And so you should not underestimate them, and you should be looking to remove that capability thoroughly. That's really what the Trump administration should be doing top to bottom here, is stripping the left of all of its ability to activate any of these centers of power that they can normally manipulate should they lose an election at some point. Salty Saiyan says, the left got away with murdering Charlie. They continue to commit violence. They continue advocating for more. What do we do now? Again, I agree that this is not a good situation. And the very first step, of course, would be to actually work together to focus on punishing these people and dismantling it. So the first thing we need to do is stop getting worried about stupid group chats and what jokes people are made about them, and start punishing the left. Start making it impossible for them to do what they're doing, make sure that it's illegal, make sure that it's actually punished once they are arrested, make sure the administration is taking this seriously. What can you do individually is, of course, a different question. I would really suggest learning how to operate a firearm, own one if you are legally allowed to own one. Remember, you're not looking for a fight. You're not looking to be tough. You're looking to protect your family and the people around you. So you need to train, and you need to be grouping with like-minded people. Just talked about being in organizations, being in contact with men from your church. Make sure you guys have a group chat. Everybody's got a plan for how to protect someone if there is an issue. Have that kind of stuff that, if in your private life, as well as also trying to influence the larger discussion with the administration and whatnot.
Yeah, well, and this is important because you mentioned we need to punish them. You're right. Legal authorities absolutely do need to. But as far as what your average citizen can do, the left only calls you a hypocrite when you found an effective strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So getting people canceled for celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, perfectly reasonable thing to do, right? The issue with cancel culture is not that some people lose their jobs. Like it is not a position on the right, nor has it ever been a position that no one should ever lose their job for any reason. That's never been a conservative argument. Our argument is that the left has weaponized the market system and social media and the way that these agencies respond to what's posted online in order to get people fired for having very normal opinions, like trans women aren't women, or there's only two genders, etc. We should want a school teacher to lose their job if they're in public mocking somebody for being killed when that person has the same values as many of their students.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Wild Speaker says they won't ally with Americans that have a heterodox view of the 20th century, but they will endlessly chase a larger percentage of the Black and Hispanic vote. Yeah, it's exactly right. Again, the conservatives are always canceling to the right and reaching out to their left, no matter how unfruitful that has been for them in the past, and they have to learn to change on this. They just have to. We can't play these games anymore. Maybe, yeah. I mean, see, now you're going to make me say your name 9 times and I can't pronounce it. Says, I think I saw that some of the pro-Palestine people say worse than that joke. Pretty sure they meant it too. I'm sure that's true, right? Like ultimately, there are probably people who have said worse and meant it. But that, again, like what percentage of these people are an effective force on the right that we really need to defeat? Most of those pro-Palestinian people are on the left, right? Like that's actually where most of that support is coming from. So obviously, as I think you're kind of alluding to here, in either direction, the left is worse even on this issue. So if you care about that first, then just care about it and defeat the left.
There's just a unique bloodthirst that exists on the left. Listen, human beings are all flawed, and I'm not trying to make it sound like the right are angels or anything, but just in terms of acceptable discourse, regardless of where you are on the Israel-Palestine issue, somebody who's right-wing, no matter how much they don't like Israel, they're probably not going out and saying that like October 7th was good. There are left-wingers who absolutely have made that claim.
Right.
So, I mean, again, we have to be sober about how dangerous these people are. They're not joking. Like, they're actually not. And they tell you that they're not joking.
Yeah, when Josh Shapiro's house is set on fire, it turns out it's a leftist pro-Palestinian guy, right? Mm-hmm. So even in that vein, you're right that even of people who hold those positions, it's obvious that the leftists that are actually violent with them. Zhang Wei says, Huck Finsdale, TLTHS. Sorry, I have no idea what that
means. What that is. So Lyons Township High School. It's they must know me from LT. That's where I went to school long ago. And Hinsdale were our rivals. So it's a little wordplay right there.
I see. All right. Yeah, I was like, that is some deep lore. If I have no clue there. So glad you had that one. Machiavelli Sucks says, imagine all the weird stuff that goes on in Hollywood parties. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious at this point, sadly.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine.
Yeah, I really don't want to. Wild Speaker says, what did you think destroying the left meant? Vibes, papers, essays, losers. Lest we forget the old proverb, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, and I don't even know about the last part there, but yeah, it is ultimately true that we have to treat the left as a real threat, and we have to stop playing patty cake. I mean, I don't know how anyone doesn't get this at this point, but debate club is over. They shot the guy who wants to debate them in the throat. Okay. You simply don't have that option anymore. And I'm sorry, but someone making jokes somewhere is just not the same. And I'm not going to pretend it's the same. And I'm not going to stop my whole movement to make sure that people believe it's the same because I'm such a good moral person. Like, no, like, sorry, but that is not moral. That is not you being a more moral person. That is you being self-righteous. That is you being a Pharisee. That is you burning things down so that you can feel superior, but still ending up in a terrible place. You're putting your own virtue signaling ahead of actually defeating the left. And I just don't have time for that right now.
Also, I want to mention something here because I agree with you. I don't buy into the idea that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but also I don't define my enemies on the basis of who my enemy tells me my enemies should be.
Right. That's right.
So do with that what you will. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, well, if the left says that guy's really a Nazi, he must really be a Nazi.
Well, and again, JD Vance has already spoken this, right? JD Vance was the one who said, look, we're not doing this. And he was exactly right. So
right.
All these people who are attacking, like, look, if you're telling me that I'm deeply immoral for not getting obsessed without this, I hope you're saying the same thing about JD Vance, because then everybody knows who you are, right? Like then it becomes clear who you really are. Memi also says Titanic plot, old woman remembers an old fling more fondly than her kids and throws away a chance to ensure their livelihood to dump treasure in an ocean before she dies. Heck, not even for a museum.
Or even if she wanted to be like, even if she wanted to be a philanthropist, like, oh, I'll give half to my kids and the rest to charity, or I'll give all of it to charity or whatever, like nothing, just throws it off the boat. It's crazy, man. But this is an important lesson about media, because there are a lot of things about that film. And the reason I talk about it is because it is like the #1 highest grossing romance film of all time. So it had some cultural impact, right? On paper, it's like a horror story. On paper, Rose is just a psychopath. But James Cameron is truly a master of his craft. And he gets you through excellent music, great cinematography, fantastic special effects to root for the bad guys in the film. And so what media essentially does is it kind of hypnotizes you. And we've given that hypnotic power over to the left completely. What I'm saying is we need media that, rather than like blindly hypnotizing you into accepting bad values, puts good edifying messages into the content that's being produced. That's what we're trying to do. Now, if you go over to twistedplots.com, you'll be supporting us in that.
There you go. Also, I have still never seen Titanic.
You've never seen Titanic?
Never seen Titanic.
I can't believe I spoiled it for you.
Well, yeah. I mean, at this point, I know the plot. Like I've seen it by proxy, of course, basically through clips and discussions on it. But I somehow have never. I'm like that guy who's just like, yep, never watched Star Wars, didn't know about it.
Well, if you ever have 12 hours free.
Yeah, there you go. Michael Robertson says, how do we balance uniting the right with rooting out the fake right? They allowed the left's problems to get this bad. I don't want to unite with, say, Mitch McConnell even now. Is that wrong? So again, it's not about, I want to be clear, because there's this weird belief that to not spend all your time denouncing and hunting and trying to pull people out of the movement is the same as like agreeing with them and being ultimately on their side, right? Like, of course I'm with you. Like I said, I have plenty of problems. I haven't stopped disagreeing with, I don't know, the guys at the Babylon Bee or whatever. Like I have all of those arguments, but the only reason I'm even fighting with them at the moment is like, they want to spend all their time like trying to like cancel other conservatives. I am not doing that. I have no interest in that, right? It doesn't mean that our disagreements go away, but like, we just don't have time for this at the moment. So I'm not asking you to like, be a big Mitch McConnell fan or, think that conservatism incorporated is a good thing. I'm just saying at the moment, we should be using all of our available energy to punish the left for the death of Charlie Kirk to prevent more of this. That's where our focus should be. Once that's done, we can go back to like figuring out, who's going to influence the right or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm, again, by the way, I know and have met Seth Dillon and Kyle and other people at the Babylon Bee who I like and, consider friends, or at the very least friendly acquaintances. And as we've been expressing, we all want to be on the same page with this. We all want to go after the left, even if we disagreed on this specific issue. It's really important for us to be laser focused about the fact that there's more that the administration needs to be doing to keep us safe.
That's right. Joe McDermott says, We can't hold the left accountable even when they're supporting what happened to Charlie until targeting conservatives and getting them out of power. Chimp out, guys. Yeah, again, as we just said, these people have to be held accountable. There should be no other focus right now. All of our energy should be directed exactly at that project. Mimi says, how to be a good conservative, give up position. Yep, that's unfortunately very often the case. Dr. Lighthouse says, it's strange how little know of the World's Fair of 1893, in particular, Palacio's World of Iron, a worthy monument to Christopher Columbus, and Chicago White City. Yeah, I mean, I'm really only familiar a whole lot with that particular World's Fair because, of course, The Devil in the White... is it The Devil in the White City is the book that they talked about, H.H. Holmes? Really focused on that World Fair and all the events around it. But a very interesting time in history, to be sure. And Dr. Lighthouse also says we need to mainstream the great proposals of the old world fairs. It would immortalize MAGA. Well, of course, that was a big thing for Walt Disney, right? Like that's basically what Epcot was supposed to be, was like this ongoing world fair. He thought it was very important to bring that to the masses. One of the interesting things about that, ironically, is the more technology we've had make things instantly available, the less world fairs hold any kind of significance. Because the thing about the world fair was you would all get together and see this new and excellent thing that was being built you couldn't see anywhere else. Now you can see it in 10 seconds on YouTube, and you don't have to go anywhere to see the newest technology being displayed on a regular basis. So that's kind of lost some of its utility, but I do understand what you're saying there. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Once again, great talking to Seamus. Make sure that you check out his work and perhaps consider donating to building the new show. If it's your first time on this channel, of course, you need to go ahead and click subscribe on YouTube. You need to click the bell and the notifications to make sure that you know when we go live, because YouTube hates it when you have a right-wing channel and they make sure that you don't get any reach. So we need your help there. And of course, if you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, you need to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. When you do, leaving a rating or review, it really helps with the algorithm magic. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.